So number 4, you're living in the future or stuck in the past, but you're not in the present. So what may it look like? You say, I'll be happy when, as soon as this is done, then I'm always waiting for the next milestone, the next, the next milestone, always waiting for the next thing to be completed or started or an understanding for something. You constantly replay mistakes or regrets instead of moving forward. And then your present life feels disconnected. Like you're just going through the motions, you're getting through. We talked about autopilot last week, and that's kind of where if you're on autopilot, you're not in the present. So why does this happen? You're either chasing the illusion of success. So the idea of the success what you've already obtained, what you've already done and accomplished, and those goals that you already have are not enough, and that it's not truly fulfilling, or you're holding on to an older version of yourself that no longer fits. How many times do we stay in the older version of ourselves just because it's comfortable versus stepping into who God called us to be? This is why understanding our gifts and our strengths and realizing that we, pouring gas and leaning more into our strengths is what God wants for us. And so, and then we get stuck living for the future. One day, future Tami, will do XYZ, or really looking at the glory days of the past, which, let's face it, are any of the past, like truly glory days. I look at some of the things that I've done and some of the things, and I'm proud of who I was, but I am so thankful for who I am, and I am excited for who I'm going to be. Like I'm excited for this journey that God has me on, and I know that when you look at it as a journey, you can be proud of it as well. And so what is a realignment question? What is something we can ask ourselves if we are living for the future or stuck in the past and we're not living in the present moment? It's like, what would it look like to fully embrace the present? What would it look like to fully embrace this moment and to be in here? So not wish you were, when you're at work, wishing you're at home, wishing you're at work. What would that look like? And so the 5th one I have for you is you feel resentful, frustrated, or like you're living someone else's life. So what would this look like? It could look like you look at other people's lives with envy or frustration. You see, man, that was my idea, or I should have done that, or I was going to do that. You secretly think this is not what I signed up for. And you feel like you've lost yourself in expectations, in responsibilities, and then the O word again, obligations. Like we've lost ourselves in the obligations that we feel we're carrying versus what the light and the freeing experience that God wants for us. And so why? We may have drifted away from what you truly want. We may have drifted away from what you truly want and are living according to a script, a expectation, something that was put on you that isn't yours and wasn't yours to carry. And it happens. Like, we don't have to feel guilty about any of these things because they're normal. I mean, I think pretty much I felt every one of them at one time or another. And I look at them and I ask myself, these are realignment questions. I ask myself when I'm starting to feel the heaviness, I ask, like, where am I misaligned? So the realignment question for this one, for if you're feeling resentful, you're frustrated, you feel like you're living someone else's life, it's what if you could start over with no limits? What would you choose? If you can wave the magic wand and just go for it, you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? And listen to those questions. So I'm going to ask you for a moment, just to think about these 5 that we've been through. Which of these resonate with you right now? I want to challenge you to pick one thing that you want to stop doing today that's pulling you out of alignment. What's one area? And again, there's no shame, there's no shade, there's no guilt here because we all fall into it. We all have responsibilities. We all have expectations. We all live through obligations. And when that becomes the norm, then we're living a life we were not we're not supposed to live. And so I want to challenge you to pick one of these and change one thing. So now, let's talk about what it looks like when you are in alignment. When you are feeling like things are, like when you are in the river versus in the reservoir. And so, the first thing is you feel energized and motivated instead of drained and overwhelmed. The shift is work and daily life are feel fulfilling and fuel you instead of feeling exhausted. You can still have a hard day's work and be tired at the end of the day, but it's different when you feel fulfilled and exhausted and like it meant something. So you wake up excited about the day instead of dreading it or avoiding it or figuring out how to get out of it. And your energy comes from passions and purpose, not just from your coffee or tea and willpower. When you don't depend on willpower and motivation. So why this happens is when you align with what truly matters, then your energy flows naturally. You're no longer forcing yourself to fit into these roles or commitments that drain you. You can still be responsible. You still have obligations. You still have your expectations, but you have aligned them with what's true to you. And so you can ask yourself, what activities or choices give me energy rather than take it away? The next one is you make decisions with confidence. No more second guessing yourself. Friend, we need to stop second guessing ourselves. There's so much time is wasted by not trusting our gut or intuition, by going with the norm or like taking action based on obligation instead of what we know to do. If I would have stayed with therapy, because again, like I worked really hard to become a therapist, years of school and thousands of hours of clinicals, getting paid nothing, and working a second job, like just to make it work for us. And then I just released it. I gave it away. I felt like God was saying, like, let it go. I have something better for you. I had, and now I see the picture of that teddy bear of, you've seen the meme or the image of Jesus holding a giant teddy bear in the back and asking this kid to give him his teddy bear. So he has something better for you. So when you trust your decisions, when you stop second guessing yourself and you make those actions, take those steps towards who you're called to be, it feels so much more aligned. And so the shift is you start to trust your intuition instead of overanalyzing. You stop asking, what should I do? And start saying, this is what I choose. And then you're clear on your priorities. So decisions feel simpler and lighter and freeing and just lighter in general. They're life-giving. So why this happens? It's when you know your values and purpose, your decisions become obvious. You naturally say yes to what aligns and no to what doesn't. And so you can ask yourself, what is the simplest, most aligned choice I can make right now? What is the simplest? Also, a lot of times, is the decisions we really want or the directions we need to go, it's the simplest thing that works. We overcomplicate things, but that's a whole nother podcast. I won't talk about that. But I am an expert at overcomplicating things. And I'm so grateful that I have my wise counsel to say, Tami, you're doing it again. So what is the simplest, most aligned choice? So number 3, you feel deep peace instead of stress and inner conflict. The shift is you stop battling between what you want and what you think you should do. You experience inner calm because your actions and values match. Like they align, and your calendar reflects your priorities, reflects your values. How you show up reflects your values. And you feel at home in your own life, and you're no longer restless or searching for something more. You're not longing for a change or feeling like something needs to be different. So why does this happen? Is the alignment eliminates the inner conflict. You're no longer living in tension between your heart and your action, your gut and your thoughts, your what you think about it and how you feel about it. Like it is all in aligned. Doesn't mean that you get it all right, because we're not going to do that. But even if we don't get it completely right, we can figure it out. And so here's something you can ask yourself is, where in my life do I feel peace? Where do I feel resistance. Like ask yourself, peace versus resistance, and lean towards peace and understand why you feel the resistance. So the next one is you experience more opportunities and synchronicities. Things happen around you. You start to get in that river and you just flow. In college, when I went to Baylor, we went and we floated the Guadalupe River, and it was the coolest thing. I had never done something like that. I'd done whitewater rafting, but this was different. It was, you're just you sit in the tube and you just go with the flow. And so this is kind of where it happens. It's like the right people, the right ideas, the right opportunities start appearing. God can orchestrate things to put into your place. And friend, you are not too late or too early. You are just on time. I was reading, and I wish I would have written down. I need to go back and look for the Bible verse that was included. That I read this, and it's talking about how God can, He can redeem our time, like He can make things happen quickly. So we're not ever late. So, but also part of it is the shift is you feel like you're in the right place at the right time, and things flow effortlessly instead of trying to fight and trying to put that square peg in the round bowl and feel like you're constantly moving uphill. So when you're aligned, why this happens? So when you're aligned, you naturally attract what's meant for you instead of chasing what isn't. You operate from clarity and authenticity, which is what we crave. Authenticity, making it easier for opportunities to just come, and then you don't feel the FOMO when you say no. And so you can ask yourself, what opportunities am I blocking by staying in misalignment? What decisions, what opportunities, what experiences are you blocking because you're staying in a life that you know you're not meant to live? And so number 5, here we're coming to the end of this. And man, I could talk about this so long. And I love, because this is one thing is when I went from a misaligned life to an aligned life, the amount of joy that came, and not that it was, now it's easy road and it's easy peasy and nothing goes wrong. But I feel so good about the decisions I make. I feel so good about, and again, preface this with, I don't make all the right decisions. Like there's some decisions that are harder to make than others, but there's not as many hard decisions. But it just feels lighter, and it feels like energy and peace. So the 5th one is you create meaningful impact and you leave a legacy that feels true to you. I am fueled by impact. I realized early on that doing things that didn't make an impact, that didn't matter, that I could not see how they had the ripple effects was really draining to me. And so the shift is when you are creating meaningful impact and leaving a legacy that feels true to you, your work and actions feel purpose-driven, purpose-aligned. You know that your life is making a difference, whether in small ways or big ways. Again, our ways are not God's ways. The size doesn't matter. We don't know the depth of our impact. We're just called to take the steps. You stop living for validation and start living for legacy, realizing that some people will never understand what you're doing. Even your family. Linda's last night was complaining about she doesn't know why. One of the rules that I have. And I will not change this rule. This is one of the few rules that I am like, I will die on this hill. And I believe in it so firmly. And she's like, I'm 15 now and I shouldn't have to. And I'm like, well, sorry. Like this is, I let you know that like early on, like when you were 2, that this was not happening. And so, but I stopped that validation that, we stopped looking for validation and are trying to get approval from others. But we know those little things mean something and we can stand up for them. And so why does this happen? Is when you align with what matters to you, you naturally create impact through, whether it's through leadership, through service, through creativity, or relationships. Like your life becomes a reflection of your deepest values. You become your truest authentic self. And then just by being around you, you can make an impact. You can impact others. And so you can ask yourself, if I live fully in alignment, what kind of impact would I make? And so I want to ask you to pause for a moment. Which of these transformations do you most want to experience? Which one do you want? Because you can have all five of them, but we have to be willing to step away from the first five things I talked about. We have to be willing to get uncomfortable, to go against the grain, to do things that don't logically make sense, but knowing that God has a better thing for us. And so I want to challenge you here. I want to challenge you to take that step, to stop doing something, to look at which of those negative, misaligned lives are you living, and what's one thing you can change to start feeling like you. And a really great place to start is to discover your core values. Or the other, well, another great place is I have a quiz for you. A quiz where you can start to look at what is holding you back, what is stopping you, and TamiMarieCoaching.com/quiz. It's that easy. It's 7 questions, but it will give you insight to what's holding you back. Because friend, life is too short to live in the past or be so focused on the present that we are so focused on the future that we don't live in the present. We don't have to make giant changes to make a meaningful impact. It's really just aligning with what is true to us, the gifts, the talents, the values that God's given us. And when we start to live that, then it flows naturally. We're floating down the Guadalupe River, or we are just in the lazy river. If you don't want to go into if you don't want a river, you can go to the lazy river and just float around and be pushed in the direction that you want to go. And so as I close today, I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to take this challenge, to take this step. And I want you to take it a step further and write it down. And then just pray over it and see what God does with it. So go take the quiz. And if you're ready to talk and go deeper with this is what I do. This is what I love. I love helping you see how amazing you are and what to do about it, how your impact matters and what your impact is, what it could look like, how understanding how God's wired you will alleviate so much stress and help you be in alignment with who He's called you to be. So if you're interested in that, click on the link in the show notes to get on a call with me and let's chat. All right, friend. With that, thank you so much for being here, and I will talk to you again next week. Did you know that Oprah started out as a news anchor? I was reading about her story and the evolution of Oprah, because now you say the name. I don't even know what Winfrey, obviously. Her last name is Oprah Winfrey, but you don't have to say her whole name in order for people to instantly know who she is. And whether you like her or not, like whether you have a feeling about her or not, doesn't really matter at this point. Like she is a legend. She's a presence. And I was reading her story about how she started out as a news anchor, but she felt out of alignment. She was forced to read these negative stories that really didn't resonate with her. She wanted to focus more on like the human focus. She wanted the positive stories. She wanted to inspire. She wanted to enlighten. She wanted to share. And so this news anchor position didn't align with her core values, with who she wanted, and she felt very pressured to conform. Well, when she identified that she wanted more of a human focused talk show, people it was not oh yeah, let's do this. She had to push through. She had to break some barriers, and she was pressured to conform, and yet she chose to align with what mattered to her. That knowing that the impact, the truth, and the personal growth, she shifted her career and her life, allowing this talk show, the Oprah Winfrey Show, to happen and allow her to create a legacy that built on her deepest purpose. Where are you focusing? Where are you forcing your life into something that doesn't align with you? And I talked about this a lot. I talked about how alignment is so crucial in our life. Like how do you align your life with your deepest purpose and values? Because we have one life, and to go through life and not have it mean something really is a waste. Having it and feeling like you're misaligned and that you're meant for more, or there's something else that there's something else waiting for you, that God's called you to something bigger, deeper, better. Like, where are you forcing yourself to stay with something that doesn't align? And what would have happened what would happen if you did trust your values? What if you trust that inner voice, that deep knowing, like Oprah did? What would happen? And even more so, what happens if you continue to stay in this misalignment? And so I was thinking of ways to talk about alignment and like, what does it represent? And I was like, you know what? When you are, we talk about flow, that things are just moving along, and it's not as difficult, right? It's not, we're not forcing it into place. That, how many times have you talked to a friend about something you want, and then all of a sudden things are orchestrated around you where it happens? Like, it's crazy. And I'm telling you, since I've chosen the word favor and I pray over favor every morning, I have a couple of Bible verses that I intentionally pray over, and asking for favor for my family, my friends, in my business, in my personal life. I see how God has shown me favor. So it's like you start aligning with what matters, and it just starts happening. And so it's like the life of alignment is like a river flowing in the right direction, moving with purpose, naturally finding its way, kind of ebbs and flows. And even if it's like rushing or it's trickling, no matter what, there's momentum and intention because it's guided by its source. It's guided by the original, like whether it's the icebergs, whether it's the ocean, but it's guided and it all goes in one direction. And that's what happens when you are guided by your core values. So what's the opposite? Have you ever been to a reservoir? Have you been to like near like a dam or something, but the water is collected, but it's not moving. So it gets heavy. It's like murky. Sometimes it smells like the reservoir. Like if it doesn't have any income or outcome, like if it stays stagnant, then like it's like a life of stagnation. That things happen when we live by obligations, when we depend on societal expectations and fears and safety rather than doing what truly matters to us. And when I talk about this, I don't mean that we have to chuck it off. Like I say this over and over. It does not mean that we have to completely quit our job, quit what we're doing, and like make a massive change. A lot of times we get to experience, what does it mean? What does it mean to be in alignment? What are our values, and how can we incorporate that into what we're doing day to day? How can we show our values through our actions, through our conversations, through our plans? How do we show it in our rest and in how we show up for others? Like that's what I'm talking about. And so are you like a flowing river going towards what truly matters? Or are you stuck in a reservoir of obligations? And I get it. We all have obligations. We have bills to pay. We have things we've signed up for that we probably should have said no to. We have things that we've signed up for, we wanted to, and then it added a lot more obligation to us than we realize. But are we being run by those obligations? And is it an obligation that it should have been a one and done? And that somehow you just keep saying, okay, or just not telling them that you want to stop. Like sometimes we think we have these obligations because once we start, it's there forever. But it's like, no, we have the ability to go back and say, you know what? I am so thankful. I am so grateful for the time that that I spent serving in this capacity. And my values have shifted, and this season, I'm going to have to step back. But if we run our life of stagnation through fears and obligations and societal expectations, let's face it, no matter what side of politics you're on, Society is not a good runner of life. It does not, society is not something you should base your decisions on, like at all, ever. Like it on any side. But if you had a natural current, if you were flowing through like a natural current, where would it take you? What becomes possible? And so today I wanted to share, I was thinking like, how can I talk about this and how can I just reinforce that how my life changed when I got aligned, how my client's life changes when they get aligned and what it feels like when you're not aligned. And these are things that, um, some you may be able to be like, oh yeah, like I feel that. Or some of them are kind of sneaky where, we don't realize that it is well, it's a repercussion of being out of alignment. So, here's some five signs that you are out of alignment. So, the first one, you feel constantly drained, even when you're successful, even when you're doing all the things, even if you are getting the promotions and you are achieving the goal, but you feel constantly drained. And one day it might look like you're achieving goals but feel exhausted, uninspired, or empty. And I did a podcast few podcasts ago, a few weeks ago about the word empty and how it's it's not worth living an empty life. So go back and listen to that one. That's probably like 290, no, 289 or something. Anyway, I'll put it in the show notes. The next, it may look like work relationships or obligations feel like chores rather than a choice. And this even happens with parenting. It happens with relationships and like romantic and friendships. Um, and and it starts to drain things that should, and I use the word should here, that they should light you up because they matter to you. They actually start to drain you or you feel like you're checking boxes. And then the last one, that an example of this one is even things that once excited you now feel dull or draining. And some of these may have to do with the season you're in. I talk a lot about like the seasons. And one thing I know is like what comes to like cooking. Um, some seasons cooking drains me because I have so many things. Spring season is so busy with all of the things, the end of school stuff, and even with homeschooling, we have a bunch of end of school stuff, projects and things and parties and get-togethers and barbecues and um so during the spring season, which I like to call the spring sprint, because really it's like just pick up your big girl panties and you just head to the finish line, and just pick up things as you go. Um, but you go and it's the season of busyness. And so I have to make smaller meals. I have to do things that'll allow me to like do them quicker. 30-minute meals, crock pot meals, different things because I know that it's a little bit more draining. But then come fall, like after the summer's over, when we get back into the school um, routine and like it's cooler outside, so there's not as much, things aren't growing as fast. So you're not constantly gardening and mowing the lawn. Like we have about 10 acres. And so mowing this takes about 4 hours. And so it's really nice when we don't have to do it weekly. Now I share this. Finally, Lindis is tall enough and weighs enough to use our mower. So now we get to share this 4 ways instead of three, which is amazing. But like the idea of cooking during the fall brings me joy. And so this is something that, if you're constantly feeling drained, even when you are successful, even when things are quote unquote going right or you're doing the right things. So this might happen when you're pursuing someone else's definition of success rather than what truly fulfills you. This is why I ask you to define things. What is success for you? This is why, like, looking at your core values is a way of defining success because that is what the values you hold are what your goals are. That's what you want to feel at the end of the day, and that's where you want to put your effort. And so, here's a question for you that, like, to help this realignment is: am I doing this because I want to, or because I think I should? So if you're feeling like you're constantly drained, even when you're successful, ask yourself this and ask in the moment, am I doing this because I want to or because I think I should? And so the next one is you keep saying yes when you mean no. And I forgot to turn on my light here. This will make it a little bit easier to see. But anyway, sorry for the blinding if you're watching this on video. But you keep saying yes when you mean to say no. So what may it look like? You agree to things that don't serve you out of guilt, obligation, there's that word again, or fear of disappointing others. I don't like disappointing others. I also know that I've gotten better at saying no to things that I know that I don't have the energy for. Your schedule is packed, but you don't feel you have control over your time. And then you resent commitments, but feel stuck in them. So this is an example of if you keep saying yes, then this misalignment may look like that. And so why might this be happening? You might be prioritizing external approval over internal alignment. This fear of disappointing others, people of letting them down, or, just because you can serve doesn't mean you should. Like we really get to look and prioritize our time and our effort and our energy. When we know our values, we get to put boundaries around those because especially if you're like, my family is one of my top priorities, my top values, like God and my faith and my relationship with Jesus, and then my family. And so I don't want to disappoint them. And so when I'm feeling out of control of my time, typically I'll look and see, and like, okay, is this just a short week or two of this? Because I've got a lot going on in February, but that's because I'm spending a lot of time with my people in March. And so you can see, like you can review it and see, because sometimes we do have to prioritize the external things. But are you prioritizing external validation or external approval over the internal alignment? And I want to go a little bit deeper there to say over what God's called you to do. So a realignment question might be, if I trusted my values over other people's expectations, what would I say no to? Let me say that again. If I trusted my values over other people's expectations, what would I say no to? Okay, so the third one is you're feeling stuck or paralyzed when making decisions. Man, we all have friends who can't make decisions. We all have times that we've made decisions, and as soon as we make it, we know it was the wrong one for us. And so what might this look like? And so you overanalyze every choice, fearing you'll make the wrong one. So at this point, you overanalyze it to the point where like you have no idea what the right one may be. You second guess yourself constantly. And then you wait for certainty before taking action, but it never comes. Ultimate certainty before any action is a myth. Like there is nothing that I am 100% certain on when I take action towards it. Sometimes I'll find clarity on the way. Then I'm like, okay, I did mostly right. But then there's other times that I'm going and I'm like, ooh, I need to course correct immediately. And so why might this one happen? This might happen because of misalignment create inner conflict. Your heart is pulling you one way, but your mind is stuck in the what if fear. The what if fear. Just make sure you get this, because the what if fear happens so often. And if we're not careful, we will live in the what if fear. And so this is why the last podcast I talk about really asking yourself some questions and getting clear if you're feeling stuck, getting clear if you are, if you're not like you're stuck with what you want to do, or you don't know what you really want. Sorry, there's people pulling up and they've got their beeper on. So I've lost my train of thought for a moment. But what can we ask ourselves? What decision feels light and freeing versus heavy and forced? When I ask myself this question, when it comes to like, I don't really know which way to go, which one feels light and freeing? Which one is avoiding other people's approval and more aligned with what God's assigned me to do? What feels heavy and forced? And when I recognize those different feelings, typically my decision becomes easier. And so as we're going here. Like, we'll keep working on the next one.